started with my refried beans, I am going to be using around a quart of leftover beans. I have several ways that I usually make my charro beans, and that is boiling on the stovetop, just like this, or I also do a crock pot version. I will leave the links below to both of those recipe videos so that you can utilize them, or you could also use store-bought. I am someone who is a big fan of using what is convenient for you. So nowadays you can buy a can of charro beans at the store, but here I'm actually making my crock pot version of charro beans, which I ultimately do find very convenient. But again, you can boil them on the stovetop. I have a recipe video for those, and I have one for the crock pot. So be sure to check the description below to see how I made them. Okay, so back to my refried beans. So I am going to start by preheating a pan, and to that I will be adding around 2 to 3 tablespoons of lard. Honestly, I think this is around 2 tablespoons of lard. If you are not comfortable with using lard, or it's not your fat of choice, you could also use oil or shortening. Okay, so once that's melted down and preheated, I'm going to add my entire leftover container of charro beans. Now, if you are using store-bought beans, or you just boiled regular pinto beans with just salt, really not seasoned well or anything, at this point you'll want to add the seasonings and spices of your choice. The charro beans that I'm using are very well seasoned, so I'm virtually not going to add anything other than some cracked black pepper, and that's just a preference. So again, bear in mind that if you're using store-bought beans or just boiled pinto beans, you'll have to season and spice them to your preference. So I'm going to let this simmer and start mashing them. Okay, so now that my beans are completely mashed, I'm going to continue cooking them and simmering them until they thicken a little bit. Now, depending on how thick you want your beans, that'll determine how long you want to cook them. But right about here is the perfect consistency, because I have other things to make, and as the beans set, they are going to thicken even more, and I do want these to be spreadable. Now I'm going to be using these beans for breakfast tacos, but if you're serving the beans alongside an entree, you might want to cook them until they get a little bit thicker. So I wanted to show you, my beans have been setting here for about 15 minutes, and already you can see they've totally thickened. It's still spreadable, but they thicken. So if you are refrying beans and you feel like, oh, it's too watery, remember, as they set and cool, they do thicken. So as usual, when I make homemade flour tortillas, I always have a hungry crew behind me. So my kiddo gets the first one. Lucky kid. That's your pop. So if you make refried beans and you want to reheat them to serve them warm, all I'm going to do is add around a 1/4 cup to a 1/2 cup to reconstitute them and turn on the heat to allow them to warm at a gentle simmer. And this will bring your refried beans back to life if they've been sitting too long on your stove and have hardened. Okay. Like I mentioned earlier, I am making breakfast tacos today, so I will leave the link in the description below for this video recipe for my delicious breakfast tacos. So whether you're serving this with an entree or you're putting them on your delicious breakfast tacos, I hope you found this video helpful and just an insight on how I like to make my refried beans. So I hope you guys give this recipe a try. I hope you like it, and thanks for watching!